Alright, today is the second video in the unusual flutes that I promised. The video I uploaded yesterday, or maybe 2 days ago, depending on when this goes up, was all about the E-flat soprano flute, pitched a minor third above the C flute. So you can see the size difference here. Well, today we're going to go one step smaller. Well, 2 steps smaller, and we're going to look at the G treble flute. This particular instrument here is a Guo, G-U-O. They're a Taiwanese company. This particular model is a new voice, and it's in plastic. And when I say it's in plastic, I mean everything here is made of plastic, except for the screws and the rods. Those are metal, and then the pads are foam. So it has a very, very different construction than our typical flute. So first off, to give you a size comparison, let's turn these around so you can see the key work. It is about 2/3 the length of the C flute. We'll compare it now to a piccolo. And between the piccolo and the G treble, the piccolo is again about 2/3 the size. And just for grins, between the G treble and the E flat. And then E flat, C, and G. So, we'll talk about this instrument here in a little bit, but first let's talk a little bit about history. This instrument does not have as prominent of a place in history as does the E flat flute. In fact, we really only see this instrument popping up in the 20th century, though there are some examples from the 19th century, and oddly enough, at least one example from Mozart, where Mozart scored for a G piccolo in his overture to the Abduction from the Seraglio. Though some speculate that may have been a recorder in G, so a sopranino recorder in G. We won't go into that, but at any rate, this instrument here is pitched 1 octave higher than the alto flute. So its lowest note is G, right in the middle of the treble clef. And I'll see if I can play that note. This instrument it does not seal very well. So you can hear how much I struggle to get out that bottom note. And some of that is the key work here is not designed particularly well. Particularly the C key here, my finger actually is so wide on this key that if I hit it, I also run the risk of hitting the E flat key. So, well, let's go ahead and talk about the design of this instrument really quickly. So it is like the E-flat flute that we looked at in the last video, a 2-piece instrument, but this one interestingly has cork on the head joint, and then that just goes right into our body there. 1-piece body, the foot joint is attached, but then all the keys here are plastic. If something goes out of adjustment on this instrument, you can't fix it. And that becomes a very difficult problem. The pads here are also foam, so they tend to leak a little bit. And the first thing that I would do if this were my instrument is try and get traditional pads put on here. And you would really need to be using piccolo pads because you would not be using flute size pads. That means the pads would be glued in. Now here's the problem. You can't heat the pads because the keys are plastic. So repadding this will be a nightmare because you can't use heat. And to that effect, I would not begin to know how to do it. So that's an inherent problem with this instrument. If this instrument, plastic body, fine, I have no problem with. But the keywork really should be made out of metal so that it can be repaired. And you'll notice this particular instrument has a part of it, the plastic covering on one of the key rods has broken off on the trill keys. And you can see that underneath here, actually this is the hinge rod itself is exposed here. And so it's sustained a little bit of damage, and because that got damaged, you can't replace it. And so the hinge rod here is all that's holding the key on. That's a poor design in my opinion. But let's talk about the usage of this instrument. In the United States, the G treble flute has not really seen much in the way of use. Where this instrument has been used is quite a bit in Ireland, in Irish flute bands. Let me just set these down so I don't have flutes rolling off my lap. So in an Irish flute band, you will typically have 3 parts, 2 or 3 parts at least, for the G treble flute. And they typically have their own manufacturer they go to that provides the metal versions of these. And with those instruments, so you have like solo first and second, like you would see in a brass band, solo first and second cornets or alto horns or whatever. And these are your main melody instruments in the Irish flute band. Also Scottish flute band and a few North English flute bands, but mostly in Ireland and Scotland. So this is really kind of derived from the fife. The traditional fife is pitched in 6-finger B flat. So put 6 fingers down, you get a B flat, and the fife only has 6 tone holes, so super simple. That transpose, if you were to look at it with a berm system fingering, that would be A flat. A flat's not a very friendly key, and there have been a few flutes like this made in A flat half a step higher. In 1918, the Haynes Company produced a total of 24, that's it, only 24 A flat piccolos, half a step higher than this, so to about here. And actually they wouldn't have the C foot, so they'd go to about here. So, but this instrument is really kind of the modern derivative of that because we don't really use D flat and A flat instruments anymore because those were really stupid transpositions. And so just drop that half a step, you get C and G, bam, and this is what we've got here. Theoretically, this instrument should slot perfectly in between the C flute and the piccolo. So, in order to demonstrate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a C scale, 2.5 octaves on the C flute, then on the piccolo, and then I'm going to go to the G treble. I'm really terrible at piccolo. Now in between, we're going to go to the G treble. and for whatever reason, this one came out the easiest for me. Flute is, again, my absolute worst woodwind. I am primarily a reed player, so I apologize for the atrocious playing. So it sounds almost just like a complete hybrid between the flute's timbre and the piccolo's timbre. What I'll do now is I'll play the same thing on the E-flat soprano, and so you can hear it. And again, I apologize for how absolutely god-awful that is. But what you can tell is the E-flat does tend to be a little bit more to the C flute, and this G treble tends to go a little bit more toward the piccolo in sound. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play a little bit of Debussy's Syrinx that I played on the last video, and just kind of close out with playing just a little bit of this. And again, apologize for any absolutely terrible flute play, but it'll give you a little bit of an idea about the G treble flute. And like the last video, this video is brought to you by David's Instrument Repair in Carrollton, Texas, where I have borrowed both the E-flat flute and the G treble flute from. And I want to send a big thank you out to David Schottel for allowing me to borrow these for a little bit, just so as a composer I can get my head around two of the rarest sizes of flute. So let me know, have you ever seen or used a G treble flute before? Not common, but an interesting possibility. This instrument needs some work. But anyway, until next time.